Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing great. Got a story out of the hedge and it's really important. It's about recession. It's entitled Recession Alert. Record number of Americans are worse off financially, and I could not agree more. What's crazy to me is everywhere we go, restaurants in my area are still full. There are still people shopping, but they're not shopping. I get it for TVs. I went through Target on that video where it was the last time I walk into a Target. It makes me completely sick unless I have to report on something in Target with that totally woke agenda and then putting all that stuff in our children's faces, right? But there's nobody in the electronics aisle. There's nobody cruising through that. There are people in the grocery aisle and there are some people perusing through the clothing, but that's it. There are more and more people with less and less money now because inflation is getting worse and worse. And that's what blows me away, where the Wall Street insiders are saying, oh yeah, they're going to pivot, or we need to pivot, we need to lower rates, but the Fed cannot do that because inflation is still out of control and they've got to really tamp it down. Unemployment numbers are not high enough, and that is exactly what the Fed wants. They want higher unemployment. They want you to lose your job. How do you feel about that? Put that down below, because to me, it makes it disgusting. Also, on top of that, before we get into this story, something else that makes it totally disgusting, this whole system of fiat currency, is that they want inflation at 2%. They want every year for you to lose 2% of your value, which forces you, and they know this, to rush out there and buy goods to keep the economy going. But if we had a gold and silver standard, or a gold standard like we did, almost a century ago, because it's been so long since we were on a true gold standard, there was no inflation with it. Why? Because the government and banks were kept in check. They could only print so much currency based on how much gold they had in reserves. But they are literally saying that we want inflation at 2%. We want you losing 2%. And that is why eventually homes go up over time. Certain assets go up like that because what happens is it's the destruction of your purchasing power. It means it costs more dollars to buy that house. It costs more dollars to buy that stock because inflation. Inflation is always here. It's not going away unless we went on to a perfect gold standard where we had an actual ratio of currency to gold in reserves. That is not happening. That's why I buy gold. I'm just saying, I'm getting off my soapbox, but that is why on the long term, gold always does well. All right, now here's the story out of Zero Hedge. 2 years ago, we referenced various reports about American savings, consumer, and retirement, reporting that they had dropped to the lowest point in years. Unfortunately, things haven't improved much since then. We just discussed the state of consumer debt, and it isn't very good at all, reaching a record $17 trillion. Now, let me stop right there and remind you, on charts, if you go through consumer debt and you look at 2005, it had hit a peak. And by 2006, it started to fall off. And by 2007, 2008, it really started to drop. Why? Because people were losing their homes, losing cars. We were in the Great Recession, right? Now we've seen the peak, but it's not even in the chart. It's actually probably through the roof of my truck. It is horrible. And that means it's about to turn. We're already seeing M2 money supply contract, which is the amount of all of the savings accounts, checking accounts, cashier's checks, things like that, shrinking. People are pulling their money out because that's what's causing this run on the banks to try and get yield, because they are in debt. They are trying to consolidate debt, and then they're literally running for the hills because they're worried about a bank collapse. I mean, if you think of it that way, this literally is a perfect storm. But it says right here, since the economy is primarily driven by consumer spending, which is currently 68% of gross domestic product, if American households are tapped out and buried in debt, the stage is set for an economic disaster. And I completely agree. As a matter of fact, I believe you are going to see it in earnest be exploding or imploding, lack of better terms, in September and October. All right, those are the key months. It says here, so today we're going to explore the current state of the typical American household finance and extrapolate the future consequences of the entire economy. Overall, American financial well-being has declined markedly. A recent report published by the Federal Reserve examined the economic well-being of households in 2022. Unfortunately, households aren't doing very well at all, according to the information in an 85-page report. I won't bore you with the entire thing. Instead, we'll take a look at some main culprits of the report. So results indicate a decline in people's financial well-being. over the previous year. Self-reported financial well-being fell sharply and was among the lowest observed since 2016. Similarly, the share of adults who said they had spent less than their income in the month before the survey fell in 2022 from the prior year, while the share who said all their credit card debt increased rose. Wait a minute, let me reread this. See, I'm already thinking of like 3 steps ahead here. It says here, uh, similarly, the share of adults who said that they spend less than their income in a month before the survey fell in 2022 from the prior year, while the share who said that their credit card debt increased rose. So you're seeing more and more people with a certain amount of credit card debt last year. It has now increased this year. It says among adults who were not retired, the survey also showed a decline in the share who felt that their retirement savings plan was on track. So a lot of people are now starting to see inflation picking up and they're going, oh my gosh, my grocery bill has literally doubled in the last 2 years. My gasoline has gone up. My electricity and natural gas has gone up. Oh my gosh, I did not budget for this increase back when we set our retirement plans. And that is very important for people to understand because we are going to go through a slight bout of hyperinflation. And I believe it's going to be in energy and in commodities, which is going to run a lot of things up, okay? It says, as you might expect, inflation's impact on adults in the U.S. has been pretty severe since it moved from transitory. Remember when the Federal Reserve was lying to you and Jerome Powell said there wouldn't be a problem? But think about this. The head of the Fed said, no, I don't believe you're going to see inflation across the board. It's going to be transitory. Exactly like the last couple of Federal Reserve's chairmen, like Janet Yellen, that said we will never see another banking crisis in our lifetime. She was the last one. She's already dead wrong. Dead wrong. Then you see Ben Bernanke. Oh, I don't think, to Maria Bartiromo on CNBC, I do not believe your premise that housing is going to fall in price. This was in 2005, mind you. Totally dead wrong. These guys, the only thing they're good at is being dead wrong. So don't forget that, all right? Dead wrong. So a lot of people did not plan for this. But it says inflation is seemingly a permanent fixture over the last 2 years, which is true, and it's going to end, just, it's going to end, but during a collapse of this currency, they're going to bring in a new digital currency, and it's done by plan. This is all by design. Then it says here, most Americans can't afford an emergency. When an emergency happens, the consequences could be dire, especially if you aren't financially equipped to handle it. But you already know this. I truly appreciate that my readers are most well-informed, financially savvy individuals. I'm just about to finish up with a new course on how to get out of debt. And one of those things is starting that emergency fund and how important it is. And I tell stories about myself and how I had to tap in and literally drained my entire 6 months reserves during a financial crisis in my own life that we tried to avoid and we couldn't. And it's very important. Right now, I think most people in America could not grab $1,000, which means they're going to dive into high interest credit cards or payday loans, even worse. And they're going to get in a lot of financial trouble. That is so very true. And then it says specifically 1 out of 3 adults can't cover a $400 emergency expense, and barely half of Americans have 3 months of emergency savings. That is mind blowing. And I want people to understand how very important that is. In closing, guys, the facts are our economy is in very serious trouble. It is on life support and it is already crashing, but you don't see the sheeple running for the exits. Why? Because you don't see it on mainstream. Once you see it on mainstream, which you will see this fall, then we will be having everyone exit the doors. The only question is, have you gotten out of the building first that's on fire? You need to be prepared. Get out of debt, stop getting into debt, and save up some cash. Buy some inflation hedges. I'm buying what the rich people do, gold. Central banks are buying gold. That's what I do, but I don't put all my money in one basket. You also need cash on the side for deflationary spikes down so you can take advantage of great deals on cars, on art, on real estate, things like that. All right, guys, that being said, I thank you so much for watching. The Economic Ninja is out.